Bill, thanks for joining us in this wonderful, wonderful garage that your daughter Cody has decorated with so many of your paintings.
Yeah.
I understand it was a surprise for you when you walked out there.
You know, I had these, as all artists do, they got a lot of them they haven't sold. More of them they haven't sold than they've sold. And they're stuck away someplace. They're in a storeroom or in the garage, wherever, you know. And one day I came out and all of these paintings were on the wall. I couldn't believe it. And otherwise they'd still be, we'd have to be tearing through the closets to find one.
Well, a shout out to Cody for doing this.
Yeah.
Well, in this segment, we want to go back and try to find the answers to a couple of questions. One of the questions is when did you think you're going to be an artist, and then when did you become a Western artist? But this starts very, very early, back in York, Nebraska, as a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And as a little boy, you started drawing things. And you don't know why, but you just started drawing things.
Oh, I do know why. Of course I know why. Because the pencil was my folks' babysitter. You know, they kept me out of the way and out of trouble. They'd stick me over the corner and give me a little pad and a pencil, and I was good for the rest of the afternoon.
So in today's world, we would call that a win-win scenario.
Yeah.
And so as you were growing up on your dad Lynn's ranch, and he was doing cattle, it was like a real working ranch.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the way he made his living in meat. You know, that's all I remember of my dad. He was always working. You know, my dad. I don't think my dad ever had any fun. Because everything I remember about him, he was busy working and making a living, as we say. So, but I love my dad. He was, he just was a very special guy. As I said earlier, he had no education. He went to high school, but you could ask him anything about anything, and he would know the answer. I don't know how he got it or where he got it, but he seemed to know everything about everything. And I was always impressed with him as a kid. Well, that's why I wrote this Dad Always Said stuff, because boy, everything that came out of his mouth was wow. And so anyway.
So I should insert that Bill has done a number of books. One of them is Dad Always Says, which is a precious book, and I highly recommend it if you can find a copy. And it has, maybe 1,000 wise sayings that Bill's dad used to live life by, in rules of the road.
The very last paragraph of the book says, "Did your dad really say all those things that you've written about in the book?" The answer is probably.
It's priceless. Highly recommended. So Bill, as a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, you were then out helping getting up the cows, and this is a meat operation, not a dairy operation.
Yes, right.
So you were exposed to Western lifestyle from the worker perspective early.
Oh yeah. I was not only exposed to it, I was forced into it. You know, that's what you did. You had to earn your keep, and you had certain jobs depending on your age and your size and everything. And when you were little, you took care of the chickens, and then as you grew up, you advanced to more difficult tasks. But that was a good life. I had a great life when I look back on it.
So you're working at the ranch, you're pencil drawing things, both as a babysitter and because your natural talent can't be denied. It's got to come out. And then as an early teenager, a man came to town who's the brother of a woman who lives there, and he's come to York as a very successful Northeastern artist for health reasons. and he takes you in.
Yeah, for health reasons. He was a drunk. He had a drinking problem, and he couldn't take care of himself. So he moved back to Nebraska, and yeah, he was a very well-known New York illustrator, and a very good one. When he was sober, I mean, he was really good. When he was drunk, he was good. But it was a shame because he was such a great guy that just the booze got a hold of him, and you know. He had to have somebody to take care of it. But it was fortunate for me because in York, Nebraska, we didn't have people like that. So you had no role model, you had no help at all. So I was very lucky at somebody else's expense.
So in exchange for cleaning his studio, he gave you basic art lessons.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you mix, like I say, you mix green with, if you want to kill red a little bit, but you still want it red, you put a little green with it. Who'd ever think of that? Well, that doesn't even logical, but it works. And yeah, he taught me all of those, what we look at now as basic. They weren't basic then, they were like, wow. And yeah, I was just very fortunate. My whole life has been a series of lucky things. I don't think I've ever earned anything. I just fell into most of my life. Has been just a lucky accident.
So Bill, let's talk about your transition working with this artist in York, from drawing, how he took you from drawing into painting, and then what did that lead to in the community?
I learned to paint, if you will, if you call it painting. There's a particular substance, I'll call it. It's white powder that you mix with water, and it's kind of like chalk. And I painted store windows for the people in town, the various stores. And that was my first experience with getting money for doing what I could do. You know, I'd paint, like during the Christmas time, I'd go from store window to store window, and I'd paint Santa Claus on one, and the elves on another one, and what have you. And, you know, I was making pretty good money for doing something which I had no idea that you could commercialize on something like that. But that was my first experience with money.
What about in the studio you were cleaning and working in?
Okay.
Did he introduce color to you in some medium?
Oh yeah. He gave me the whole shot because he was a professional, and he had done it all, and he was very well known when he was doing it before he started drinking, and yeah. So he introduced me to the whole works. So I learned color. I learned what kind of paint to use, what kind of board. There was a particular board back then called coquille board, and it was a kind of, you know what illustration board looks like. Well, this was illustration board, but it had a pattern of little dots. So when you drew on it, you're only drawing the little dots. That's, your pencil only hits the little dots, it doesn't go down in. So that saves you from doing doing it in the camera, which they did later, but it was a lot cheaper to do it if you just drew it on there like that. And so I learned a lot of that stuff that I would never have learned in York, Nebraska. So,
Would you have been working with oil paints?
I started working with oil paints when I was in college. I didn't know what oil paints were. I had watercolors, and when my dad would go to a trip in the market in Omaha, he would always bring me back some kind of art thing. And So I became familiar with medium, with all the art media. And I just didn't realize, I guess, until later that you made money doing it. And that was a nice surprise.
So you go through this, and so that accelerates your drawing and your painting. And now as a young teenager, you've got more important things to do on the ranch, like breaking horses.
Well, yeah, they put me on as a kid because, you know, when you're a kid, first of all, you don't break bones and all that stuff. And you're lightweight, and you're disposable. You know, something happens to you, they have another kid. You know, so I had a great life, just an absolutely great life.
And so you were like the neighborhood horse breaking guy for 10 years.
Yeah.
And people would bring their horses over.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to break a horse before breakfast.
Yeah, because these guys, you know, they were usually older guys. They didn't want to get on one of those horses, get hurt. But a young kid, you know, they didn't care if I got hurt because I would mend. And yeah, so I had a nice little side job breaking horses for people.
And at the same time, then you started going into rodeo, and we're in the bucking bronco part of the rodeo.
Yeah, I rode bucking horses.
Any ribbons?
Oh, we didn't get ribbons for that. You got money for it. And yeah, I've got a lot of, well, as I say, I made a movie on the history of rodeo, which is very interesting because it grew out of the working cowboy. You know, everything in rodeo, it came from a purpose, a reason why, a part of Western life, part of ranching life. They didn't make up this stuff. It was all part of it. Bucking horses, roping, bulldogging even. Bulldogging started with a guy, I'm trying to think of his name, I can't remember. He's a black guy that came to town, and he was kind of a novelty because he bulldogged. And nobody had ever heard of that. Nobody had ever done that. Where you ride along and you drop down on a steer and wrestle him to the ground. And so this was really different. And it started a whole new sport of bulldogging.
Turns out people will pay money to see that.
They wanted to see that, yeah.
So while you're doing the rodeo and the horse breaking for all your neighbors, you're still drawing. So you're getting real first-hand experience about the details of this part of Western life.
Yeah.